It's time for our Big 12 episode. We've got a good friend of our show, Shehan Jeyarajah. I'm sorry, your last name is going to be impossible for me to say over the next however many episodes you do with us in the future. But I'm going to make an attempt every time, Shehan.
Well, you pretty much nailed it, and then you got scared, and then you just kind of gave up on it. You got to listen, man. You got to run through the tackle. If you give up, that's how you run into trouble.
I know.
I
got scared.
Don't put our last names on there either. He's got some German last name, and then mine. If you watched it, you'd see how the insults progress through puberty.
People would be scared of our last name, so that's why we don't ever put ours on. But really appreciate you joining our show. I think it's the third time we've had you on. Last year, I know you did we did Big Ten with you last year, I believe. Big Ten with you. But this time we're going Big 12.
Indiana hype.
I was. I remember it well. And you were right about one thing, but let's just be clear. That doesn't mean you're going to be right about everything.
Yes. Just because you nailed Indiana doesn't mean that every other hot take is going to be correct.
I might have put my hand right back in that cookie jar, and it's going to bite me this year, but that's okay.
Luckily, the Big 12, you can look at most of this conference and go, you know what? About half of them, I could see you at least making the Big 12 championship or at least be in contention. I remember at one point last year, someone came out with a model, and you could basically go through the rest of the schedule and put the winners, and it would predict who was going to be in the Big 12 championship. And we were like 3 weeks left in the season, and I think there were still 7 teams that were still eligible to make the Big 12 championship. And I think that this could be similar where we're into November and there's not really a clear, favorite. I mean, we'll have somebody like we had BYU. Everybody thought BYU was going to be in the Big 12 championship last year, and then they fell apart there at the end. But I think the one, Shehan, I want to start with, we got to start with Arizona State. Obviously, Kenny Dillingham, makes it to the college football playoff, gives Texas everything they can handle. Jordan Tyson goes out, and they still, Cam Scatterbo just has an all-worldly game where he wins MVP for a team that didn't even win. I mean, are we going to see a fall off from Kenny Dillingham this year? It's Cam Scatterbo, but Jordan Tyson's here. Like, what is your read on the situation here at Arizona State?
Well, I don't think enough people realize that they're like top 5 nationally in returning production. So Cam Scatterbo is gone. Everybody else is back. And that's Sam Levitt, that's Xavier Alford at safety, that's CJ Fight at defensive line, that's Jordan Tyson at receiver, that's most of their offensive and defensive lines. Like, everybody is back on this team. And look, obviously the running back position is going to be a question mark. They bring in an 1,100-yard rusher from Army, Kanye Udo, to, by the way, mix with a former 5-star Raleek Brown who missed last season with injuries. And by the way, they also bring back their backup running back, Kyson Brown. So, I think that Arizona State is going to be perfectly fine. Now, that said, look at, I've been around the Big 12 for over a decade at this point. Look at the last 10 years or so, especially since they reinstituted a title game. It's hard to replicate close wins year over year. Mm-hmm. And when you're in the Big 12, you're going to play a lot of close games because there are a lot of high quality teams in that league. So even if they are about similar quality, that doesn't guarantee that they're just going to be able to win 12 games or whatever it was that they did last year. But I do think that they're going to have a chance to still be pretty special. And this absolutely belongs as one of the top contenders heading into the year.
And I tell you what, they better have that Texas State game circled. I mean, that Texas State, the Wildcats gave them all they needed all down to the end. I think Arizona State ended up winning by 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a super close game. They play Mississippi State again this year, which I think, again, that wasn't a very close game until Mississippi State made it close at the end. I think that Arizona State's going to really take that one personally this year. But this is the thing too, right? You're playing a bunch of tricky teams, a bunch of interesting teams on the schedule, not ones who are better than you, but ones who can give you a little bit of a scare. And the thing that I'd love to see from a program development perspective is take care of business in those games. Obviously Sam Levitt was out. They lose that game mid-year at Cincinnati. I think that team, even without Levitt, should have been good enough to still win a game like that. Yeah. You play these close games early in the year. You lose to Texas Tech early in the year. I want to see more consistency out of the gate. And again, the ball's going to bounce a certain way in your key 2 or 3 games, but at least separate yourself from that bottom to middle tier.
The one thing about Arizona State last year is everybody knows the story. They were predicted to finish last. The media had them dead last. For fair reason. They lost so much. And they were not actually ranked until November. So they flew under the radar. They were, 7-2, 8-2 before they finally got ranked in November. And it's not like in the middle of October, we were looking at Arizona State saying, yeah, hey, we think they're going to be the team that comes out of the Big 12. Like, it was almost the end of the year before people finally started to acknowledge, like, hey, maybe Arizona State is going to make the playoff, rather than, hey, Arizona State's a nice story where they made it to, a bowl game.
Jake, I don't think it's crazy to say that people really didn't fully wake up on Arizona State until the Iowa State beat down in the Big 12 championship, because even I, going to that game, despite everything Arizona State had done, was like, Iowa State's about to drum these fools. Like, they can't handle the passing attack that Iowa State's about to bring to them. And you know what they did? They go out there and drum them 45-19. And Iowa State, those 19 points, I mean, those were garbage time. Like, they just absolutely beat the dog crap out of them in the Cotton Bowl. So, no, not the Cotton Bowl. Where they play?
Big 12 championship.
AT&T.
AT&T. Yeah, sorry. So just an absolute beatdown. But like, no one respected him. And then going in the playoffs, everyone's like, oh, well, that's the cakewalk. Everyone wants to play Arizona State. I'll tell you what. I think when Texas left that what was it, the Fiesta Bowl? Where'd they play?
Might have been the Cotton Bowl.
It was the Peach Bowl.
Peach Bowl?
It was a Peach Bowl. It was
a Peach Bowl.
Because I was at the Cotton. That was next Ohio State.
When Texas left that Peach Bowl, they left knowing that they'd felt something. That was a tough fought game by a team that never gave up, even though they should have time after time again.
I mean, they had Quinn Ewers on 4th down, and
the game was over. The game was over.
Yeah.
They stop him on 4th down, but they bring a blitz, and Quinn Ewers dices him up, scores a touchdown. Obviously, they win the next overtime.
Great catch. Yeah.
But Arizona State was right there. I mean, Shehan, what do you think the ceiling is for Arizona State? I mean, they made the playoff. They were that close to beating Texas. I think most people believe that if they had beat Texas, they probably would have lost to Ohio State. I can't imagine a situation where the Arizona State would be the team that beat Ohio State.
To Ohio State in the playoff last year. Yeah.
But ceiling this year.
I do think that they have a high ceiling, right? I mean, so I think that they absolutely have the ceiling to replicate what they did last year. And, that would put them in the, potentially top half of the college football playoff. Now, again, running through the Big 12 schedule, it's always going to be tough to escape with only one loss, but plenty of teams have done it over the years too. And this is one of the most talented teams in the conference. Once you get to the playoff, I think that what I wanted to see from them last year that I was impressed by was their ability to hang in the trenches. And like I mentioned, they bring back a lot of their trench talent. Yeah, I mean, they're not necessarily going to beat up teams, but they can hang. And that's what you want to see from them. My hope is that they continue to develop another year, that you get a second year Sam Leavitt, who should be even better. Mm-hmm. By the way, during this beatdown of Iowa State and this really close game against Texas, you don't have Jordan Tyson in the lineup.
Yeah.
Jordan Tyson is the best
receiver in the Big 12. They could have used Jordan Tyson in that. I think if you have Jordan Tyson, I think that you could justify them having a case where they would have beat Texas, because Cam Scadaboo had to do everything. He was throwing the ball. He was catching the ball, riding the ball.
Can I give a hot take?
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
I'm kind of glad he didn't play, because despite the loss, the showing that Cam Scadaboo put out there because of that was inspiring. I kid you not. I was in tears when he had the touchdown, when the offensive line pulled him in, and he's just over there dying, puking his guts out. Like,
I was a little nervous for him, because before the game, he said that nobody can stop him. And like that first quarter, he was getting no yards. Yeah. But then the second half, he's catching like a 50-yard pass. He's throwing passes. He
read our tweets. He saw our tweets, and he was like, you know what? Let me show these boys.
And I'll tell you what too, right? I think that we're going to talk about a lot of these Big 12 teams, obviously, and a lot of them are going to have good cases to be in the contender class. The ones that can separate are the ones who have one or two players on offense who can take over games. We saw that with Cam Scadaboo last year. We saw that with Iowa State's receivers last year. We saw that with Bryson Washington and Sawyer Robertson at Baylor. We saw, so like the teams that contend at the highest level, that are playing the best in the month of November, are the ones who have offensive difference makers. And I think the big question will be, okay, we know that they've got the combination of Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson. Who's stepping up to be that next guy? You don't need Cam Scadaboo by any means, but you do need another guy to be a game-breaking type player.
Yeah, so I want to move over to Kansas State because Kansas State has been consistent under Charlie Kleiman. I mean, I pulled it up. He is 48-28. He's won 8 games or more every single year except the COVID season. But it feels like that he is getting close. It just feels like he can't quite get over the hump. He's getting close. They win the conference championship in 2022, but they also have 4 losses on the schedule at the end of the year. They're 10-4. Avery Johnson, it feels like if he's going to do something, like we all want to see it like happen this year. Shehan, like what needs to happen for Kansas State to get over that hump, make their second, Big 12 championship and possibly make a run into that playoff spot?
Well, it's interesting. I just mentioned obviously the idea of having explosive playmakers, but actually for Kansas State, because we know they have that, it's more going to be the more standard down stuff, because last year DJ Giddens was such a consistent player for them at running back, and Dylan Edwards is going to be tremendous, but he's more of a home run threat. He's not necessarily a 4 yards in a cloud of dust kind of guy. And I've been, Avery Johnson was one of the top recruits in program history when he came in. They pushed Will Howard out for him, and they stand by their decision in a lot of ways. But the thing that we saw from him last year is, I mean, he turned over the ball a lot. A lot was asked of him, both as a passer and as a runner. And I don't think he was there as a passer with consistency, right? He was an under 60% completion guy. They've tried to make his life easier by bringing in a couple of transfers. Jaron Bradley, coming in from Boston College, is a big-bodied receiver. Caleb Medford from New Mexico. Both those guys started their careers actually in the Big 12 in the state of Texas at Texas Tech and TCU respectively. And they also bring in the tight end Lincoln Cure, best recruit in program history, 5-star player. So they want to make his life and his job just a little bit easier. And I think that when you look at some of the games where Kansas State struggled last year, it were the games where Avery Johnson was pressing, where he tried to do too much, where he tried to win the game with his arm and not necessarily just take plays that came to them. Because we know what this team is on defense. Offensive line wise, they bring back their all conference center. They will have to replace some pieces, but they really feel like, hey, by giving him some safer options around the field, you don't have to just focus in on Jace Brown. They're one really good receiver. You got a couple of options that are just a little safer.
You want a fun fact about Kansas State? It's a little bit of Kansas propaganda littered in there too.
Oh dear.
Kansas leads Kansas State. What is it? I have it written down. Pardon me. Kansas leads Kansas State 65-52, despite Kansas State winning the last 16 matchups in the Sunflower Rivalry.
But I mean, listen, we don't have to go back to 1989 and them hiring Bill Snyder and the fact that they were going to cancel their football program and all that stuff. A lot of stuff's happened since then, and that stuff has not been good for the University of Kansas. I'll tell you what.
Well, but somehow Kansas is still 13 games up in the series overall.
Yes,
that is insane.
The 1930s happened. We acknowledge it.
I have an opinion that we need a live ball and a dead ball era in college football, because when you were playing with leather helmets, I don't care what your players were doing. I think basically 1950, 1960, whenever we started to change, we have records for that, and then we have records when the forward pass was illegal.
So, I mean,
you'd have to admit last year for Michigan, they don't get last year.
Well, I mean,
take it.
Listen, since in the Kansas State is on a 16-game winning streak against the University of Kansas right now. Kansas has won 4 of these things in the 21st century. I promise you, this is not a stat that's going to help Kansas look better. I assure you.
Oh no!
Yeah, if anything, it makes them look worse.
But they lead the series. They're winning the war. They're winning the war.
Yeah, because their wins came during wars.
During the war.
If you would get rid of the matchups that came during the wars of World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War, then they are no longer up.
I would argue those are the most American games we've had, when we had soldiers fighting on the front lines and the gridiron.
But think about the next Michael Bishop could have been fighting in the Korean War. We don't know that. So
That's true. That's
we
true.
don't know how that could have impacted Kansas State.
That's why they lost all of those.
Sorry, this is what happens when I open my mouth. Shehan, you take over with the actual logic. Let me quit spewing my nonsense.
But Kansas State. So I wanted to pull up their schedule because they go to Ireland. The weird Farmageddon game in Ireland. Don't get me started. I think it's really dumb that two teams in the Midwest are playing in Ireland.
Hopefully,
I really do hate. I personally hate neutral site games that aren't like traditional for some reason. So
you are literally a Midwesterner wearing a green St. Patrick's Day colored shirt. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
you're propping
this is a golf tournament shirt. Thank you very much. This is the Memorial Golf Tournament.
What, March 17th golf tournament? I don't know.
No, Memorial Day. Jack's tournament. Jack Nicklaus. But yes, I get it. Yes, St. Patrick's Day.
Jake wants there to be a famine on Farmageddon in Ireland.
Yeah, no more potatoes.
Not potatoes, just potato-shaped balls.
So the schedule. After Iowa State, they get North Dakota, which you really can't. I don't think anybody should ever take that.
No, not North Dakota State. Not North Dakota State.
Yeah, but all the Dakotas, it just feels weird. Don't mess around.
That's the most manageable of the Dakotas, I will say, but you still don't want to take them too much for granted.
Army, the service academies are hard to judge, but you play against a very, very usually disciplined team who, if you take them lightly, you're gonna be in a dogfight. But then after that, the schedule gets lighter for.
Do you have the right schedule up?
No,
yeah,
Kansas State,
September 6th.
Do you have the right schedule up?
Because it's Kansas. Oh no, I don't have Iowa State scheduled. Never mind.
So, hey,
but then after that, they get
on the Army game because, like we were just saying earlier, when did Kansas dominate this series?
Oh, goodness.
When they're playing servicemen.
Yeah,
I'm gonna stop beating that joke.
In reality, though, after Iowa State, they should win their next four with North Dakota, Army, Arizona, UCF before you get to Baylor, TCU, Kansas. So Kansas State, I know that you said they got a couple transfers coming in at wide receiver. If they win that Iowa State game, you get a couple games to mesh. You get a couple games to build that chemistry because from what it looks like there's only one transfer on the offensive line. Defense, for the most part, should be returning guys or at least guys that were on the roster already. So it doesn't look like there's a ton of new faces from outside the program that are coming in. Am I perceiving this correctly?
They're replacing six starters.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of replaced starters, especially on the offensive line. I think that Iowa State game, Kansas State, Iowa State, is going to be one of the most important games of the season in the Big 12. And I think whichever team wins that game is going to come out of it as a legitimate conference contender. Mm-hmm. Because, and this has been true in several years, right? Like, I mean, they have played really competitive games. They've been the class of the conference in a lot of ways over the past 5 years or so. I think that they've got two of maybe the 3 or 4 best coaches in the conference right now. So, like, whoever comes out of that game and has time to gel even more and prepare for the season, I mean, they're probably going to be like a top 15 type team at that point. And maybe along with Arizona State, I'd imagine maybe the highest ranked team in the Big 12 at that point. So that game's incredibly important. It's going to be a huge national TV, everybody watching type game, of course, with it being the Ireland game. So for them, I mean, like that's the sort of onus that I need Avery Johnson to take on. That's the kind of onus that I need this program to take on, because like you said, if you win at Iowa State, you're probably starting 5-0, I think it is. And then you head into the heart of your schedule, but you've already got multiple big time Big 12 victories under your belt by the time you get to Baylor, TCU, Kansas, Texas Tech, Utah after that as well.
Yeah, and so Texas Tech is actually the next team I wanted to move into, because I feel like last year there was a lot of hype around Texas Tech. And I mean, they go 8-4. 8-4 is fine. They make a bowl game, but I feel like people were expecting a little bit more from them, a little bit, more improvement. And it feels like this is the year where they address their needs. The defensive line was not good last year. So they go out, they bring in David Bailey from Stanford. They bring in a bunch of other guys on that defensive line. Lee Hunter from UCF is one that I know is notable because he should be able to fill space and, fill up those holes in there. Micah Hudson leaves and comes back. I don't really know what to make of Micah Hudson.
Prodigal
he really
son.
didn't have a great year last year. He leaves, he comes
He
back.
barely played. Yeah, I would not expect him to factor into the rotation a ton, at least in the first half of the year.
But Baron Morton is where everything is going to be. I mean, he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the country last year, but is he the guy that can take them to that next step? Is he going to be the quarterback that can push that, 9-10 win threshold for Texas Tech? I love Joey McGuire because I think him having the high school roots, you did a big piece on him, but the high school roots to me, ever since he's been hired, just have shown that, if you have a Texas high school coach that was successful coaching in the state of Texas, I think you give yourself a little bit of advantage, at least in the recruiting aspect, for sure.
So here's the thing, right? Because you mentioned it. Obviously, Baron Morton was an efficient quarterback, not always an effective quarterback. But talking to people around that program, the plan is not for the quarterback to carry them. The plan is very much to build the Philadelphia Eagles of college football, to have elite trench play, to have, you mentioned the defensive line. It's David Bailey coming in with the pass rush, Romello Hyatt, Lee Hunter. They've got a tremendous linebacker core led by Jacob Rodriguez. And for them, they looked at their team last year and they said, we have one of the worst pass defenses in the country. And yes, we need to get better at corner and safety, but we really have to get after the quarterback. So this, I think, worst case scenario is the best pass rush in the Big 12. And then offensively, they also tried to fill some of those holes. They brought in 3 transfers on the offensive line, including Howard Sampson, the one of the top tackles available in the portal from North Carolina. So
also 6'8", 350, just a massive human being.
I saw him because I came into their facility to go talk to people when they were having their bigs do workouts, and there is one big who is a little bigger than all the rest of them. He stands out immediately as being that dude, even in a room filled with potential NFL guys. So I mean, they want to try to bulldoze teams. They want to try to lessen the sort of externalities available, right? They don't want Baron Morton to have to throw the ball 45 times a game to try to win games. They don't want to have to lean on their wide receiver core. They want to be able to control games, especially against quote unquote lesser teams. So you mentioned for them to have a chance to have a 9 or 10 win season. I think if they don't win 10, that would be a disappointing season. I think that would absolutely not be considered a successful season if they won 9. And you hear about it every single time from every single person. We want to be playing in Arlington with the amount of talent that they brought in, the amount that they invested. The reason that this happened and the reason that this exists is because Texas Tech, out of the schools in Texas in the Power Conference, is the only one that hasn't contended for conference championships over the last 15 years. And this is the moment where they feel like they have to do it.
Now Shehan, I'll say my biggest question mark when it comes to Texas Tech is I'm looking at the running game, and you have to replace Taj Brooks. Who's gonna fill those massive shoes? Is it going to be running back by committee? Do they think they have their war daddy and Quentin Joyner? I mean, which I thought he was pretty lackluster at USC, but maybe that's because USC's offensive line was a little weak. How do you replace Taj Brooks?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a combo, but Quentin Joyner's the guy who they have a lot of faith in. And it's not just Tech people. I've talked to recruiting staff at other places, and they were like, man, we identified Quentin Joyner as a guy that was so underutilized at USC, and we feel like is incredibly undervalued. The irony actually, this gets a little too Texas made, but they played at the same high school in Austin, actually, Taj Brooks and Quentin Joyner. So they were able to kind of leverage that relationship at Manor High School to get Quentin Joyner on campus. But that's a player who they think is going to be a really, really good player, but they've got 2 or 3 additional backs. Again, they want to be a team that powers through teams. They don't want to be one who's leaning too much in the passing game. The big thing for me now is going to be they do have 2 new coordinators coming in, Mac Leftwich on offense and Sheil Wood on defense. 2 really good coordinators, but that can be
nonetheless,
that can be a transition, right? And so I think that it's going to be really interesting to see, can they get things sped up straight away, or do we see some growing pains?
Yeah.
Well, luckily for them, their first 3 games are probably 3 of the easiest games in college football this year, with Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, who is still probably going to be the worst college football team, and Oregon State, who last year obviously took a significant step back after Jonathan Smith left. I mean, and then you still talk about Utah. We'll get into them here in a little bit, but last year, no real offensive identity. Is Kyle Whittingham going to be able to figure it out? Houston, we'll see if Connor Wegman can, try to put a little bit of juice in there. And then Kansas. So even their first couple Big 12 games, you're not looking at them being like, yeah, like that's going to, like, let's circle that one. That's when we'll really learn about Texas Tech. Like, we may not learn about Texas Tech, how good the offense and defense really are, until the middle to the end of October, unless they get upset somewhere in there.
I think when you go to Utah, you're going to Utah September 20th. I think you'll find out a little bit because A, it's tough to play at Utah. B, Utah, despite their offensive woes last year, I think the defense was still pretty damn good. And I think Kyle Whittingham, that's one of those things that he just does. He just churns out defensive players. So I think you might find out what this Texas Tech offense is really made of that week. Maybe not the defense.
Well, so I'll say two things. One, we'll get to it, of course. Utah is going to be, I think, pretty good on offense this year. Now, that not necessarily conference championship level offensive good, but I think they're going to be pretty good. So we will definitely learn some stuff in that game. But actually, let's point to that Houston game just for a second, right? On the road against Houston, against an in-state team. That's the sort of game where I don't want it to be a contest, right? Like, not in terms of like that you have to win by 40, but just in terms of like, this is why you imported these trenches.
Mm-hmm.
You brought them in so that you're not worrying in these games. Right. Texas Tech, again, you mentioned goes 8-5 last year. 6 of their wins last year are 1-score games. So even when they played teams that they were better than and beat them, they were still in close 55-45 games.
And that includes Oklahoma State, who is god awful at the end of the year.
Yes.
Just terrible.
If you take 55-45 games that you win and turn them into 80-20 games that you win, that just changes what your season has to be, right? Like William, obviously, I mean, again, that's kind of what Clemson was able to do between like 2010 and 2015, right? Like, It wasn't just that they started playing better against the good teams. It's that the less good teams were just no challenge at all.
Yeah,
and I think that
Clemsoning mantra, you get out there and it's like you don't allow them to hang around, and you don't take your foot off the gas at any point. And we need Texas Tech to have that killer mindset.
So I think when they play Houston, because the first 3 games those teams aren't good enough to even hang, most likely. Once they play Houston, if that game is fully in control for the last 3 quarters, I think that's going to say something about how this is working.
Yeah. I like that. And I think you can set the tone, Utah. You go to the bye week and you come out in Houston, you just come out swinging. Yep. And like you're saying, if you come out there and blow them out at home, Willie Fritz, good head coach, Connor Wegman, former 5-star guy, you come out there and just let them know, hey, this is a real football team. We play Big 10 football over here in the Big 12 now. So let's show them how we do it.
Listen, man, you're all out of date, man. It's been like this for like 8 years at this point.
Well, the final team that we had as contenders, and we all actually agreed on this, was Baylor. And Baylor last year, if you looked at them only through early October, you would have thought that they were terrible. If you watched them the last, 6 or 7 weeks of the season, they looked like a completely different team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the one game that sticks out in my mind, and this was an early game, was that Colorado game because of how close that game was. And Colorado probably should have lost that game.
Yeah,
if it wasn't for some, late game heroics from Shadur and then Travis Hunter forcing a fumble in overtime. That was the game where I thought Sawyer Robinson really came out of his shell. And obviously, they, of course, then play BYU and Iowa State, 2 very tough games. But they handle business the rest of the year, including against Texas Tech, where there's a lot of people that are circling Baylor as a team that is going to make a jump this year. Shehan, is this mainly because of like a Sawyer Robertson thing? Is this Dave Aranda is getting it back going? Like, where do you think that most of this is coming from that people are looking at Baylor?
Yeah, it's interesting. So obviously I'm a Baylor guy, and so I've been around the program for a while. And last year reminded me so much of Baylor's 2012 season, the year after the Heisman. So what happened that year, right? Nick Florence came in, good quarterback, but just, the team was totally overmatched in some key areas, especially on defense. But the thing that changed everything for Baylor in 2012 was they got the running game going. And they've got a running back who, I mean, I'd say I would argue, but I think it might just be consensus, is the best in the Big 12 in Bryson Washington. He was a redshirt freshman last year, and he just completely took off the second half of the year, was putting up 150 yards in a lot of those second half games. And the thing is, once you got the running game going, once you got the offensive line going, they brought in a new offensive line coach who did a really good job. It just freed Sawyer Robertson up to unload, essentially. And in the second half of the year, I mean, that combination of Bryson Washington and Sawyer Robertson was, I mean, I feel like saying the best quarterback running back combination in the Big 12 is selling it short. Like, well, other than Arizona State with Levitt and Scadaboo, of course. But outside of that combo, like, they were lighting everybody on fire in the second half of the year. And even in the bowl game where Baylor lost and struggled on defense against LSU, like, you still saw Sawyer and Bryson Washington have really, really impressive performances before Bryson got hurt. And so I think that, like, the floor for Baylor this year is that they're a top 3 offense in the Big 12. And they really should have a pretty good chance to be number 1. And defensively, they're good up front. Where they need to grow is in the secondary. And that's the sort of thing, again, like, especially after Dave Aranda took over this defense, I think that there was improvement in year 1 of him calling the defense. I expect more improvement in year 2 of him calling the defense. Like, you just start to look, and this is a place that has dynamic play at almost every single level. You've got it in, of course, the quarterback and running back, like I mentioned. You've got it at linebacker. Keaton Thomas is a really, really exciting player. And so if they're able to shore up some of those holes, again, they proved in the back half of the season they could contend with the best. And if they can take that step and really rely on that continuity, this is a team that absolutely can win the league.
Well, and kind of the reverse of some of these other teams is when you look at their schedule, they don't have time to wait around and figure it out. Now,
it's real early.
Their conference schedule obviously doesn't kick up until the 4th week, but you open the season against Auburn, which no matter what, it's still an SEC team, even if people aren't fully sure about Auburn this year. You play on the road at SMU, team obviously that went to the playoffs last year. You get Samford, that'll be a win. Then you get Arizona State, then Oklahoma State, and Kansas State that first week of October. Those first 6 games, they could be anywhere from, my guess is they'll drop probably at least 1 in there. I have a hard time thinking they will go 6-0. I think they'll drop at least 1, but I think you're somewhere between 3-3 and 6 or 5-1. Obviously 3-3, you're going to be wondering what the rest of the season's got because they got 1 or 2 other tough games. 5-1, I mean, they're sitting probably in the top 20 at that point because they might have multiple top 25 wins.
Yeah, and I want to backtrack a little bit to that defense. You mentioned Keaton Thomas. Fun fact, and I know Trevion Barnes wasn't there last year, but Keaton Thomas had 114 total tackles last year. That is absurd. Trevion Barnes, who's coming in from Florida Atlantic, had 129 tackles last year. Their 2 linebackers are tackling freaking machines. Now, I know you have the jack position or whatever they call it over at Baylor. But they're 2 true inside backers. Almost 250 some odd tackles as a duo is absurd. So you want to talk about shoring up all the tackles if someone's running the ball against them, that's freaking amazing.
Well, and Dave Aranda's, again, his background is as a linebackers coach. That's something that they take very seriously there. They have some guys on the defensive line who they feel really good about. It's really going to be okay. You know, they made a change at secondary coach. They let a longtime coach go, but they made a fantastic hire, bringing Paul Gonzalez over from TCU, who was the secondary coach for Trevon Merrick and Trey Hodges-Tomlinson and a bunch of other guys who were All-Americans and Thorpe Award winners. So, like, if he can make an impact on that back end, like, the ceiling kind of is unlimited for this team with the way that they're set up. So, like you said, though, it has to happen quick. If Baylor, let's just say, if Baylor is 6-0, I don't think they will be. I think they're probably 5-1, like you said. I think that would be a great place for them to be. I even think the top 20 might be under. I think it might be top 15, depending on what those wins are. If they're 6-0, Like, I'm not saying that you're locking up a playoff spot at that point, but they're pretty dang close with how tough that stretch is.
That back half gets significantly easier when you talk
Yes.
about Cincinnati, UCF, Arizona, Houston as 4 of your remaining
Yes.
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 They should
And
be
so-
double-digit favorites easy.
Exactly. And again, so if you're at if you're at 6-0, like those are 4 games that you should easily win. Like you're at 10. Like that's where you're at.
Mhm.
Now again, I think that 5 is more realistic and would still be great. 4 is where it's like, okay, maybe you're just going to be a nice team. Maybe you're trying to win the Big 12, whatever, and try to get into that Big 12 title game and have a chance. But if you can be at 5 or 6, like that is like you are one of the teams. And especially, by the way, I've called Baylor the most important team in the Big 12 this year, because if they beat Auburn and SMU, that gives the Big 12 a whole lot of credibility heading into the rest of the year. Because if they lose to Auburn, right, and let's say that they finish top 2 or 3 in the league and Auburn goes 7-5, well, it's like, okay, the number 2 team in the Big 12 that's trying to get a playoff spot, they lost to a middling SEC team. And, if Baylor loses to SMU, it's okay. Well, we don't think that SMU is likely to win the ACC. So all of a sudden, a team that's contending for an at-large spot lost head-to-head. So, like, it's really, I think, going to be critical for Baylor to put up good showings in those 2 games. Again, I think that they probably... If I had to guess, I'd bet that they split them, but I think that you really, really want to have a good performance, especially against Auburn, because if you don't, that's something that's going to drag you down as a conference for the rest of the year.
Luckily, they get that one at home, and
yes.
I'll
be there. It's a Friday game. It's going to be a lot of fun.
There's some reports coming out from Auburn that Hugh Freeze was telling his defense to basically take it easy on Jackson Arnold for his confidence, which probably not what should be going public when you're 5 weeks away and you've basically already anointed Jackson Arnold as your starter.
I feel like Hugh Freeze thinks he's... Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying Hugh Freeze is trying to help with confidence, and he's basically telling his quarterback he's not good.
I feel like Hugh Freeze thinks he's Steve Spurrier, and that he can come out and say these things, and that like people go, "Oh, Steve, no, you sound like an ass," and you're ruining your quarterback's confidence by trying to say that you're trying to help his confidence. Like, what are we doing?
I feel like he's like
get off the golf course.
See, it's interesting. I feel like he's more like running a little scared right now, because he knows, like, if this season goes badly, like they might fire him. Like that might happen. And I think that he had a lot more confidence in his abilities before this moment. And so again, like this is a huge game, not just for Baylor, but for Auburn too, right? Because if Auburn wins this game, I think that the winner of Baylor-Auburn has a really good chance to be in the college football playoff at the end of the year. But the loser of that game...
I'm not buying that on Auburn, even if they win.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But like, if whichever team loses that game, it would be easy for them to go into a tailspin right after that.
Oh, yes. Now, Auburn, at least it's a little bit easier. This isn't an SEC show, but Baylor has to rebound immediately and go on the road to SMU, who now has a grass field.
Yep.
They also have a grass field. They put it out there that they play on grass now. But that's an incredibly important game, because if you go 0-2, I mean, not that Aranda's on a hot seat, but you're, like you said, you're in a tailspin, because
your season's over, right? Like your season's over in terms of the goals most likely that you wanted to try to accomplish.
Unless you somehow manage to go undefeated through the Big 12, because luckily those aren't conference games, but you're looking at an 0-2 and trying to figure out how do we get ourselves together for, hey, by the way, you'd play Arizona State, who just made the college football playoff and has all these guys coming back. Oh, hey, by the way, you could play Kansas State. Avery Johnson's going to try to shred up your defense. So I agree that Baylor, like, they have to split them. They have to split them, if not win both of them, to really put themselves in a good situation heading into the rest of the month of September, nonetheless. Not even October, November. Just get through September. Want to start jumping over to our dark horses, because we had all 4 of those were our contenders. There's a couple other.
I've got 3 other contenders.
Oh my God!
I have 7 teams that I truly think. TCU. I want to make sure we talk about TCU and Josh Hoover. Iowa State. We've talked a little bit about Iowa State, but Rocco Beck coming back. I know they lose Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, but Abu Sama's still there, even though he's still not projected to start. Phenomenal freshman year. Took a step back last year. I think he really can step back forward and be that dude again in that backfield. And then, no, just TCU and TCU. No, Kansas. And why? And I know I was making jokes before we started that we had to spew some Kansas propaganda. Shout out Lance Leipold, you're the man. But if you look back at the games that Kansas lost, they lost by 11 points or less in all their games except for one, and they went 6-6. So
they didn't make a bowl game.
5-7.
They didn't make a bowl game last year.
So, but they were right there. They were right there on the cusp. Yes, you lose Devin Neal, and that's going to suck. But you still have Jaden Daniels or Jalen Daniels, excuse me. You still have him, and having the nucleus of that offense along with Lance Leipold, a guy who's been there for that long. I really think Kansas can contend. I mean, they're fringe dark horse contender for me, and I just bumped them up to contender just to shout out my man Lance Leipold. But truly, I think I would have them as a dark horse. But I wouldn't be shocked to see them playing in the Big 12 championship. I really wouldn't.
The concern I have about Kansas is the same thing every year is Jalen Daniels going to stay healthy? And he did for the most part last year. But the problem last year is he turned the ball over so many times in crucial moments, which caused them to lose their games.
Yeah.
He had 12 interceptions, and there were times where you see him throw the ball and he can just spin it, or he's elusive. But then there's also times where you're like, what are you doing? Like, why were you throwing that pass? There's nobody even close. I really do love Jalen Daniels. I think he is a phenomenal talent, but I'm not sold that Jalen Daniels is going to lead a 10-win Kansas team.
If it were fumbles, I would be worried. Interceptions can be coached out of you. Fumbles, maybe not always. Interceptions, you can coach that out of some guys.
So I think that just to touch on Kansas, like I think that Jalen's going to be a lot better, a lot healthier. Like I'm honestly not super concerned about that. I'm not going to say it's nothing, but I'm not super concerned about that. A big thing for me is like they're completely rebuilding their wide receiving core after losing a bunch of fifth-year guys. Mm-hmm. That while I think that Daniel Highshaw is a good player, they bring in LaShawn Williams from Iowa at running back. They're not Devin Neal. I think that's obviously a big deal. And then on defense, the big thing for me is their secondary. They had 2 all Big 12 first-team secondary players in Mello Dotson and in Kobe Bryant. Both those guys are gone. Now, I think they'll be better up front. They brought in some transfers that I feel really good about. Bengali Kamara, Justice Finkley. But, it's just that back end. Are they going to be as good as they've been the past year or two? But, I want to be I do think that there's a vision there, right? Because I do think that I think Jalen Daniels is going to be good. A guy, by the way, I didn't realize this until Big 12 Media did. So I was talking to some Kansas people. You know who their starting tight end is going to be?
It's the cat from hold on.
I have no idea.
It's Deshaun Haneke, who was one of the Iowa State players involved in the gambling probe.
Oh my goodness!
Nope, that's not who I thought. They lost their tight end. That's who I was thinking of. The guy who transferred to Texas, Georgia, transferred to an SEC school. Doesn't matter.
But
nope, did not know that.
So no, it's Deshaun Haneke, who is a good player, by the way, and thankfully that whole situation is resolved now. Which what a couple of months.
And I'm thankful that Lance Leipold took a gamble on him.
Oh, brother. But no. So I mean, this offense has a chance to be pretty fun. And I think that also, they're handing the keys back to one of Lance's guys as offensive coordinator. I think that's probably going to help matters as well. But it is kind of that defense. Can they be okay on the back end? And, again, I think that's a big question mark that's hanging over this team.
You made a good point about the offensive coordinator, because this is the third offensive coordinator in the last 3 years. Obviously, Andy Kotelnicki was with Lance Leipold for what felt like 20 years. He was with them at Buffalo. He was with them before that. Lance Leipold pulled him along. Obviously, Kotelnicki's at Penn State. The coordinator, who I'm blanking on his name now, is at Wisconsin.
Jeff Grimes, yeah.
Jeff Grimes. So I'm interested because obviously it's another Lance Leipold guy. What is the offense going to be? How is it going to differentiate? Because I know I personally never like when we're, looking at 3 years, 3 offensive coordinators.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the guy who they brought in, I was mixing his name up with Jim Zabrowski. He was Jalen Daniels' quarterback coach. He's been with Lance Leipold a lot of spots. He's worked with Andy Kotelnicki. So like, I think they got a little too cute bringing in an outside offensive coordinator last time, and Jeff Grimes, who really, he's a wide zone guy. He had a lot of success doing that at Baylor. And by the way, I think that Kansas offensive line development has a lot to do with Jeff Grimes. But like, especially in the passing game, I just don't think that he fit the identity of what this team was under Andy Kotelnicki. Even though it's a third OC in 3 years, it's a return in some ways because this is a guy who's been on staff the entire time.
Now, I'll say this. So you said the biggest question mark for Kansas is the defensive backfield. You stop me when you hear a passing attack that you're afraid of on this schedule. Fresno State, Wagner,
No.
Missouri, West Virginia, Cincinnati, maybe.
I like Thorsby, but yeah, not the receiver so much.
UCF.
No, because they're going to give up 70,000 points.
Texas Tech. You should be afraid of Texas Tech.
Yes, afraid of Texas Tech.
Kansas State.
Yeah,
I'm a little afraid.
I'm more afraid of their running attack than their passing, but I think Avery Johnson can throw the football.
Avery Johnson.
Arizona. Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State doesn't have a quarterback throwing a pass yet.
Exactly. Arizona. Iowa State, you should be worried about Rocco Beck.
Very worried.
And Utah. So
in Utah, I think will still be more of a running situation. Yeah. So no, I mean that's actually pretty fair. Yeah. So again, it's possible for them to get there, right? And the hope, of course, is that playing a bunch of lackluster offense, because that's actually kind of crazy how few of the good quararterbacks in the Big 12 they get. Because like there's 11 returners in this conference right now.
You don't play Baylor, you don't play TCU, you don't play I'm blanking on. No, you do play Texas Tech. So like
you don't play Arizona State.
Exactly.
So like, there's a couple of them. Yeah,
I think there's a couple other quarterbacks on this thing that could. Like, I mean, I'm very intrigued in the Rich Rodriguez situation because I think they're going to pull an upset on somebody.
It's going to be a running thing. That's the thing.
I think they're going to pull an upset on somebody. I don't think they're going to be very good, but I think they're going to pull an upset on somebody.
Yeah.
Bo
They're also
Pribula,
replacing 80 guys at West Virginia. 80.
Yeah, they're doing the full reload. Like that
Deion.
Yeah, and the other thing too, though, is that with the West Virginia thing, they're going to get somebody, but it's going to be a home game. They're playing. West Virginia's going to be on the road for that game.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Utah because you brought it up and you've mentioned a couple of times about Utah because I think we can agree that Utah's defense under Kyle Whittingham has continued to just be good. It's every year, it almost feels like an Iowa situation where Phil Parker's there, so they're going to be good. Utah just seems like defense is going to be good, and even parallels on offense because the quarterback situation has been pretty much terrible since Cam Rising has been a game time decision for the last 2 years. Finally, not a game time decision this year. Finally, decided that he is out.
He's a doctorate decision.
I think they bring in is it Devin Dampier? Is that his name?
Yep.
The quarterback from New Mexico. Feels like that's who they're going to run with. They're trying to solidify that. So, but he's not going to be some guy that airs it out. Like you said, there's going to be more of a rushing attack. He wasn't a guy that's going to be like a Josh Hoover that's going to throw for 3,500 yards this year. Yeah. Utah, their identity being a running attack, how does that change from last year where, similar, they had good defense. How are they going to transform that where they can win more games this year?
Yeah. And quick note, Shehan, Devin Dampier was an 1,000-yard rusher.
Yep.
So you want to talk about a rushing attack coming from the backfield at all angles. That's the guy you want to get. So obviously they are committing to this identity of running the freaking football. Sorry, Shehan, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. There's two things that one thing that I like, one thing I don't like that I want to put into this. One, Utah, if you look at Vegas right now, is the betting favorite to win the Big 12.
Which is insane.
That's nonsensical. That's ridiculous to me. They absolutely could be there. Let me be clear about that. But for them to be the favorite is outrageous. I do not understand what's
Phil
going on.
Steele has him second behind Baylor. I mean, he's got Utah above Arizona State. I'm like, Phil, my dog.
I think that if you had them 4 or 5, like I can absolutely see that. I mean, 3 maybe, but like 2, 1, it's just too much to put on them in some ways, is what I feel. Anyway, The thing, though, and I had a long conversation with Kyle Whittingham at Big 12 Media Days about this, is I kind of asked him, is this a return in some ways to how Utah was under Urban Meyer when he was defensive coordinator? Because it's not as power as Urban, it's not as power spread, but it's option spread, right? Like that's what they're trying to do. And he actually was like, yeah, that's almost exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to go back in some ways to the structure of how that worked. Now
the difference, Shehan, Alex Smith could throw the ball a lot better than Devin Dampier.
And that's the big part. That's a big part of it. But think back to the last 2 years, because 2 years ago they run out a literal walk-on pig farmer and win 8 games, right? Like the next year they run out a true freshman who struggles a lot more. And I actually, like, frankly, one piece of this is I think that Kyle Whittingham deserves a little bit more heat than he's gotten about how he managed not just the top of the quarterback room, but the depth of the quarterback room. Not just Cam Rising not being available, but not having real options behind him. I think that is something that you just cannot do in this era. But I think that he's resolved that in a lot of ways. Devin Dampier, Isaac Wilson is actually coming back, even though he's going to be the backup quarterback. I actually give Utah a ton of credit for managing to keep him around. But this is the thing, is that this was one of the worst offenses in college football each of the past 2 seasons. And 2 years ago, at least, they still won 8 games. With this new offense brought in by offensive coordinator Jason Beck, the floor is just astonishingly higher, because no matter what, like you said, this was an offense at New Mexico that was the only one in college football to have 2,000-yard rushers in the regular season. Ohio State played 16 games, so they got a second, but a real 1,000-yard rushers in Devin Dampier, and I can't remember who the running back was. So now you bring that into Utah. And yeah, one piece of this is that they're going to have to slow down the pace of the offense, because that's just how Utah rolls, right? Like they're not going to want to play too up-tempo. But this is going to be, from a yardage and productivity perspective, an upper half offense. Like it just is, regardless of whether it works or not. And so just bringing in that level of upside and consistency without even getting into whether Devin Dampier can throw the ball, which I've heard good reviews from camp, and I've heard good reviews from people around the program that they feel like, hey, a big part of his, because he was a 12-12 touchdown interception ratio guy, and he wasn't a big time passing numbers guy. They kind of were like, look, he had nobody to throw to, and everything that he did passing wise was running around trying to make something happen, and which I do think is fair. Now, can he throw in structure? We really have no idea at this point. But even if he can't, the structure of their running game is going to ensure, even if they're just essentially running the option, it's going to give them more floor than they've had in at least 3 years.
Yeah. It's feels like we're going to see a little bit more. Well, hopefully see more points out of Utah, because
it can't be as bad as it's been, as it was last year, especially.
But flipping over a team that scored a lot of points last year, TCU, Josh Hoover was one of the better quarterbacks in the country, at least by metric terms. When you talk about stats, I believe he was towards the top, if not at the top of the leaderboard. When you talk about yards, he was pushing 4,000 yards last year.
I think he threw the most.
He was up there for sure, and I know he had at least a couple 500-yard games last year. This year, we saw the step back. Obviously, Sonny Dykes took the first year, or was it his first year? First year, they went to college football national championship, gets absolutely blown out by Georgia in a game that didn't even look like we were playing in the same game at one point. Significant step back. They come back last year. They win 8 games. Josh Hoover is recruited by everybody that wants a quarterback to go play for him. That he comes back to TCU, and now they get to open the season against Bill Belichick, just like we all predicted a year ago.
Monday Night Football.
Just like where Bill Belichick is used to playing on Monday Night Football. For TCU, I think they're going to be good on offense. Like I think Josh Hoover is going to be good. I just think this might be a fun team to watch, but not one that's going to be the biggest, a lot. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of bark and bite at the end of the season when we get there.
I think they're gonna have to beat everybody in a duel. And I will say a fun fact about them last year. If I want to temper my expectations, having them as a fringe contender, they didn't play a single ranked team last year, not one. So you talk about Josh Hoover, lighting the world on fire. Who did he do it against? I mean, it's tough to do it in P4. Like I don't want to. In a Power 4 conference, it's tough to throw for 4,000 yards. In any conference, it's tough to throw for almost 4,000 yards. So I don't want to take that away from them. But when you're not having to go up against a legitimate top 25 team, it makes it a lot easier to throw the football. It should. There's some top 25 teams out there that had abysmal pass offense or pass defenses. Don't get me wrong. You talk about Miami last year. You could throw the ball over them, and it didn't matter. Arizona State struggled. No, it wasn't Arizona State. Yeah, Arizona State struggled to stop the pass last year. So you think about some of those top teams that struggled to stop the pass. Can TCU prove it against contenders this year? I don't know because we haven't seen it.
So I think that there's two pieces of this. So Josh Hoover is not going to be as productive as he was last year. I'm going to throw that out right away for 3 reasons. One, they lost their top 2 targets, Savion Williams and Jack Besh, 2 really, really good wide receivers, and they're gone. The second reason is that, and actually my biggest question about this team, period, is they need to run the ball better. Like they just have to run the ball better. They didn't
have a single 100-yard rusher in any game last year.
That's crazy, right? This is TCU. This is a good program, but they just really struggled. They have Trent Battle coming back. They added a kid from UTSA at running back. So I don't think it's just a running back issue. I think that this is an interior offensive line issue that they're going to have to figure out. We'll kind of see if they've done it. But I actually will push back. Their defense in the second half of the year, like, it improved quite a bit. Like, you look in their last couple of games, like, they managed, yes, it wasn't the greatest of competition, and that's a big part of why they had a 4-game winning streak to end the year, but, like, they shut down Cincinnati. They shut down Oklahoma State. They shut down Louisiana. They shut down Arkansas. Arizona. They had a good defensive game plan against Baylor and Texas Tech and just kind of gave up some big plays. So, like, I think that this defense is better than people realize. Probably the best player on their whole roster is their safety, Bud Clark, who's been playing with the team for 4 years at this point. I think he had a pick 6 in the semifinal game against Michigan. That's how long he's been around.
And what a name, too.
Yeah. And so, like, this is a team on defense that expects to be pretty good. And the funny thing, I talk to Sonny pretty often because I'm a DFW guy, obviously. And one thing that he said is that like they caught lightning in a bottle with year 1, right? Like, that's a crazy thing to have happened, to go to the national title game. But you look at his other teams and his other builds, like most people, they tend to be 3-year builds, right? Like, that's what it was at SMU. It was, hey, let's start off, let's figure out what works for us, and then let's elevate, and then let's elevate. Let's, for a second, eliminate his year 1. Pretend that never happened. Well, then they're a 5-7 and a 9-4, and then they're heading into year 3 with a lot of returning production. So, like Sonny Dykes said on the podium at Big 12 Media Days, we expect to be in Arlington. And they are, from a recruiting perspective, probably the most talented or second talented team in the league. Like, when you look at stuff like 247 Talent Composite. So, like, I think this team is undervalued. I think this team absolutely does have the upside to be the best team in the Big 12. They probably deserve a little bit more contenders credit than they have gotten. But like you said, it's the two things. They didn't do it against anybody last year because of how soft the second half of their schedule was. And they have to run the ball. Like they just have to figure out how to run the ball.
And that's the most damning part of the last half, when you're playing unranked teams and you still can't run the football.
Yep.
That's going to cost you. I mean, this year when you have to play a Kansas State, when you have to play a Baylor, and if you can't establish the line of scrimmage, if you can't start winning the line of scrimmage, they're going to just pin their ears back and tear you up. And like you said, you lose your 2 best pass targets for Josh Hoover. He's going to take a step back from that aspect, and then you're just playing tougher defenses altogether. I still think he'll be a 3,000-yard passer. Yes. Above 3,000 yards passer, but
he's not going to be 4,000 like he was, close to 4,000 like he was last
year. I agree. And So TCU, if their offense can lead them and their defense can be consistent, man, again, that's another team. It's like, wouldn't be shocked. Would not be shocked to see them there.
Keep coming up with, man, and this is the thing, right? There's probably 9 who have a realistic shot in this conference.
I mean, seriously, and like when Jake and I did our pre-conference preview, like, kind of like setting the mold for what we were going to do here, we had like this was the conference that the top to the bottom was the lowest gap out of any of the conferences.
Oh, yeah. And well, if you look at Vegas, every single team in the Big 12 has an over-under between 5.5 and 8.5. Like a 3-game gap between the top and the bottom. Now, I kind of feel it's a little crazy that UCF has an over-under that high. If we're being quite honest, I think they should be a
Scott Frost effect
3.5 type over-under, but it's
high.
A good stat, so I get to keep repeating it.
Yeah, that's high. I mean, but that tells you this is a deep conference. There's so much, like you talk about how difficult the SEC is, and rightfully so. It's not easy to win the Big 12 either, because you can't sleepwalk into any of these stadiums and hope you're going to win. I mean, it's just not going to happen. If you're freaking Kansas State and you're riding high and you go into the freaking sunflower rivalry against Kansas, and Kansas has struggled a little bit, you better not be sleeping, because they're going to come and punch you in the mouth too. Like, all these teams can legitimately beat each other. And like, if you simmed 100 games, nobody's winning 100 games against any of these teams. That's what makes this like one of my favorite conferences, if not my favorite conference to watch by far.
Yeah. And so there's 2 other teams here we had on here, and I kind of want to run through them quick. That way, not holding you too long, Shehan. But one of them's Iowa State. Obviously, Rocco Beckett is back, but they lose both their wide receivers. Am I crazy for thinking that this offense is going to take a step back? Because they were 2 phenomenal wide receivers. They both went in the I believe either both went in the second, or one went in the second, one went in the third. But 2 phenomenal receivers. Rocco Beckett is obviously going to have to find new targets here. I think that Iowa State is going to be good. I think Matt Campbell just knows how to win. I think it's going to happen, but they just don't have another Noel and Higgins just sitting there on the sideline.
Yeah, they brought in 2 transfer receivers who I think are going to be really, really good, and Chase Sowell and Xavier Townsend. Sowell especially, I think, has a lot of upside. But like, here's the thing. They could be like awesome players, and it could still be a huge downgrade, right? Like, that's just how good those other 2 guys were last year. And, like I was talking about with TCU, I mean, Abu Sama, who's been mentioned a couple times, is a really, really explosive back. But, I mean, one of the reasons that he hasn't been that feature guy is because they just don't have somebody who can get them 4 yards. Like, they don't have that consistent rushing threat. And that's, I think, a big thing for them. And the other thing, too, like, Iowa State is another program that you kind of set your watch to their defense, but they did lose a lot of their top end talent. Like, they did lose a bunch of key guys on defense. Talking to Matt Campbell at Big 12 Media Days, what he said too was, yeah, man, but because of all the injuries we had last year, we had as many as we've ever had. Tons of guys have experience, and that does matter. Yeah. But it's still going to be really hard to replicate what just happened. So, yeah, I mean, I think that I might be a little too dismissive of them being in the contender tier, because this was a team that played for the Big 12 last year and has a quarterback who's up there with all the rest that we talked about. But it's just to replicate some of that just feels really, really difficult.
I agree. And one thing talking about replicating is BYU is another name that last year they were, America's sweetheart. They came out of nowhere. They were looking like they were going to be a team that they was going to make the college football playoff. They were undefeated at one point. And now, I mean, they lose a lot, and let alone you lose your starting quarterback in the middle of the summer. The whole storyline with that. Are they going to be even a dark horse at some point? I know that there's a lot of talk about BYU fans talking about, hey, like, Jake Retzlaff, he's really good, but he was limited. And they think that there might be guys that have a higher ceiling behind Retzlaff that could play.
So if Jake Retzlaff is in the lineup, BYU might be my pick to win the Big 12. Like, they were set up really well. And without him, they belong in the dark horse group. I'd probably have them 5, 6, 7, and somewhere in that range. But like, the task is just a lot harder. And I don't disagree with BYU fans. Like, I think there are guys on the roster who have more upside. But when you talk about the way that offense was structured, everything was built around Jake Retzlaff. He had to do everything for that offense last year because last year, for example, especially, they had injuries at the running back position. Well, Retzlaff stepped up and ran the ball. He was the second leading rusher on the team. They didn't have very many explosive components. He brought some of that deep game passing ability. He made good decisions. And yeah, there were games, especially in the second half of the year, where he made mistakes. He also had a game-winning play, and then he had a play to set up a game-winning field goal, right? Like, he was clutch in moments that are huge. And the other piece that you just have to mention about this is that I'm trying to think of like some other programs, right? But there are other programs in this conference. If they lost their starting quarterback, it would be really bad, but like their backup is pretty capable and you're like, they'll figure something out. The gap between Jake Retzlaff and the other guys in that room right now is astronomical because you have two guys there who are on the roster last year in McKay Hillstead and Trayson Borgetz, both of whom who have played college football, and Hillstead started games at Utah State. But not a single one of them took a snap last year because they were third and fourth string behind Gary Bohannon and Retzlaff. You have an exciting freshman who just transferred in from Stanford, and Bear Bachmeier, who I think might be
great name.
He's trust me. There's a whole other because his brother is Tiger Bachmeier who came over,
and there's a Hank.
And they're both Hank's brother, and I think there's a fourth one as well. Anyway, that's all beside the point. But like, I think that Bear is. I don't even think I know that Bear Bachmeier is the highest upside quarterback in the room. He's also a true freshman, so I'm curious at what point, and it might be mid-season, when they decide, hey, let's try him out and see what he's got. If I had to guess, their opening day starter is going to be McKay Hillstead, and their closing day starter will be Bear Bachmeier. So, like, if they had, this is a good quarterback conference, so that, maybe league average doesn't mean a whole lot. But if they had league average quarterback play, I think that this is a top 3 team in the league because defensively, they are really good. I don't think people understand how good they were defensively last year. They were, if you look at opposing passer rating nationally, they were number 3 nationally. If you look at interceptions, they led the nation in interceptions. They were one of the top 15 defenses in yardage defense last year. Like, this is a really good defense that returns one of the best one of the best linebacking cores in the country with Isaiah Glasgow and Jack Kelly. And they brought back almost all the weapons on the offense as well. It's just that we don't know who's going to throw them the ball.
Right. Well, but I think you see Retzlaff leave, and everybody knows Retzlaff. So I think I backed off completely. I'm like, I don't know what to think of this team anymore. You're bringing me back to reality because I did forget how suffocating that defense is. I mean, you look at the SMU game. SMU couldn't move the ball to save their life. You think of what was the game later in the year? Who they smacked down? Who did BYU smack down? I'm gonna come back to this. But they were suffocating to some teams. I was thinking of Kansas State. What they did to Kansas State was that was abuse. I called the police in the middle of that game, especially when I saw what was it, the punt return they took to the house. Like, they were just abusing Kansas State.
Destroyed them.
And that's a really good offense. I mean, the ability to run the ball, that tells you how good they are at stopping the run, and they bring all that back. I'm glad you brought me back down to earth on them because I was the opposite way. I was in the pits of hell thinking about BYU. Sorry,
brought
John
you back
Smith.
up to earth, I guess.
That's right. Brought me back up to earth because I'm like, man, like, you lose Retzlaff, you lose like the gritty part of this offense. Yeah, it's the defense that stirs the drink here in Provo. So I gotta remember that. So thank you, Shehan.
No, and so again, like, this is a team that I think still will win 7 or 8, but like, again, I go back to what I said at the beginning, right? It's finding where can you find dynamic offense, because you just have to. That's how you differentiate yourself in these years, right? And if you don't have it, and I don't know that BYU has it right now, it's just hard to move back in to that contender tier. And I think, look, I mean, they, especially on offense, I think were very much a work in progress last year. The hope was that in 2025, you get to see the payoff of that work. And unfortunately, like I said, I think they're probably going to start one of the transfers at the beginning, and I expect that Bear Bachmeier is the future for the next couple of years by the end of the year.
I hope so. I just want to be able to say that name when watching the BYU football team. Bear Bachmeier leads the Cougars. I mean, that's just rolls off the tongue, right?
Well, one last thing, Shehan, before we let you get out of here. So we've been doing this where we want to pick one team that doesn't need to mean they're going to win the Big 12 or even be a contender, but a team that we haven't talked about really yet, that probably in the lower half, that you think might make a jump up, might hit that 7-8, outperform their win total, which I can't say it's well outperformed because everybody's between 5 and 8 really in the Big 12, but somebody you think might outperform the win total that we're sitting at right now.
Well, we just listed off like damn near half the league. So
I know.
But well, so two things. One, Baylor's FanDuel over under is at 7.5, and I don't get it. I don't understand what I'm looking at. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But that's obviously not my pick because we talked about them. I'm kind of into Houston, man. Like I'm kind of into them. So you want to talk about defenses that played well in the second half of the year. Houston was grinding some guys, and they're still trying to get their rep share situation worked out, and because of that, they lost a couple of key guys off that defense, and their defensive coordinator Shilwood to Houston or to Texas Tech. But they brought in Austin Armstrong from Florida, who I think will be a really good fit for them there. And offensively, they revamped the offensive line with a couple guys with starting experience coming from the SEC and I guess Cal is in the ACC now. I was trying to think of what conference they're even in because they brought in a transfer from there.
Who could forget?
But obviously the addition of Connor Wegman is really, really exciting. He's not the 5-star that was billed. I want to be very clear about that. Nobody thinks that they're getting a 5-star quarterback to Houston, but he's a dynamic player. He's got one of the best arms that we've seen at Houston in a couple of years. I think that he's going to surprise some people with his designed running ability, but I also expect that Houston is just frankly going to protect him better than Texas A&M did and protect his health. My big sort of drawback with this team is like, I don't know if they have the playmakers at receiver to be exciting on offense, but I think they'll be improved. Stephon Johnson's a good player for them. I think that he's going to have a chance to maybe be an all-conference receiver if some things break right. And like, again, I mean, Willie Fritz teams are just so well coached. Mm-hmm. They're not going to beat themselves. They're not going to make mistakes. When you look at 2024, that was just a roster that was not good enough to be able to just not make mistakes and win games. But I think that's going to change in 2025.
Yeah, mine is Houston as well, because everything you said there, the Connor Wegman, the quarterback position was an absolute disaster for them last year. There was nothing good that happened. I mean, they got shut out in back-to-back games at one point. Like, it's hard to be shut out in college football.
I'll blame their offensive line play as well for that. I don't want to put it all at the feet of Zion Chris.
Oh, no.
But it wasn't
the offense in general was just not good. I mean, it's hard to be shut out once in college football because people just find ways to score. To be shut out in back-to-back weeks, it's almost impressive of how bad it was. But having some sort of a consistency at quarterback, a guy that has arm talent, like you said, I don't think anybody expects him to go out there and be the 5-star. But I think that you can look at Connor Wegman and say, this is a power 4 starter. Like, he can go and he can start in the Big 12, and he is not going to be an absolute liability under center. The other thing is, I look at the schedule and it gives Willie Fritz a chance to actually go out there and push towards a bowl game, because I look and I see 8 games that I go, that's potential they could win between Stephen F. Austin, Rice. I'm not really sure what to make of Colorado with all the changes. I think their defensive line will be a little bit better, but I think the defense might be a little bit something now that we're in year 3, but I still think that's a winnable game. Oregon State, Oklahoma State, Arizona, West Virginia, UCF. All those games I look and go, I think Houston at least has a puncher's chance. So will they win 8 games? No, I don't think they're going to win 8 games. But I think they're going to make a bowl game. I think that Willie Fritz is a really good coach. We saw what he did at Tulane. Houston, he's not very far away from where his roots were there. I like Houston to at least make a bowl game. They're not going to contend in the Big 12, but I could also see them, if it gets going, giving a couple teams towards the end of the year, giving a TCU or giving a Baylor a fight that they weren't expecting.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss not to mention with their offensive situation, they're bringing back Slade Nagel, who was Willie Fritz's offensive coordinator at Tulane, spent last year at LSU. And one thing that I heard that I love to hear from Willie Fritz was that they feel like Slade Nagel learned a lot about drop back passing during his time at LSU, just because working with Garrett Nussmeier, working with the staff that they have there. And they feel like they're going to be able to have a really good marriage of a few more drop back concepts with a lot of the option stuff that they still love to do. So again, like their situation last year really didn't work out well for them, but there's so many little things that you add to the equation here. I'm really excited about what this team can be, even if, again, this is just year 2 of a rebuild.
Who do you got, Will?
I got Cincinnati, and you know, you look at Brendan Sorsby. I like what he can do. I like his potential. I think he takes a step forward this year. Tyree Wilson, I believe his last name
Tyree
was
Walker.
Walker, thank you. Out of Wisconsin. I think he's got a lot of potential. Again, there's 2 guys with potential in that backfield. Tyree Walker was very untapped potential over at Wisconsin. Obviously, I think a lot of it had to do with switching the offense, switching back the offense. I think of the Michael Scott, meme, snip, snap, snip, snap. He comes to a Cincinnati team that's going to need to establish a run to be able to compete in this league. Someone that could be someone that no one's talking about right now is Jeff Caldwell. He was a Big South receiver last year. I'm forgetting what school he actually played for, but he was a Big South selection. 6'5". There's a lot of things you can coach. You cannot coach size. 6'5" plays. So I'm very excited about what this Cincinnati offense could be. All I say with all 3 of those guys, potential. A guy who does not have potential because he's already tapped into it, you see that he's great, is Dante Corleone on that defense. He is one of my favorite defensive tackles in the country. I mean, he should be in the conversation with your Peter Woods, with your Zane Durant's. He is a phenomenal run stopper. I believe he had over 70 tackles last year as a defensive tackle. That is not normal, people. That is linebacker normal. That is average linebacker statistics at a defensive tackle position where you're supposed to be open, like closing gaps, so they have to bounce out for the linebacker to make the tackle, and you're not only closing the gaps, you're making the tackle. I think Dante Corleone is a phenomenal football player. And can really make nightmares for offensive line coaches and offensive coordinators trying to establish a running game. So Cincinnati is not going to be an easy out for anybody, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if you see them. I have them about 6-6, maybe 7-5. Wouldn't be shocked to see them 8-4 if they steal a couple more games. Maybe a team comes in limping. Maybe we have some injuries here, or maybe some of these guys I'm talking about potential on offense take a huge step forward, and they're able to. I mean, if anybody's going to make a team take a step forward and beat some teams they shouldn't, it's Scott Satterfield. I mean, you think about what he's been able to do at Appalachian State.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's been since Appalachian State that they've been punching
up. He's been good. Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? So Cincinnati's a fascinating story for me because they really wanted to give Brendan Sorsby some weapons, right? Like they really wanted to emphasize the best part of that team. And I think they did that in a good way. They also brought in, by the way, an offensive tackle in Joe Cotton from South Dakota that people really feel like has a chance to be like an all-conference type player. It's just like, for me, it's the situational stuff, man. They keep messing up in these big moments. And I don't know how much of that is just like the coaching staff, right? Like, I don't know how much of that is just being poorly coached and managed.
And you're right. And it's late game stuff because you look at their losses last year. Pittsburgh, 1 point. Texas Tech, 3 points. Colorado,
the Pitt game was awful,
11.
by the way. Go back and watch that if you haven't seen that.
They fell apart. I think they were up 21. And then Eli Holstein just put on a clinic.
27-7.
Yeah, so 20 points. West Virginia, 7 points. Colorado, 11 points. Iowa State, 17 points. That was a big blowout. Kansas State beat the dog piss out of them, and then TCU beat them by 7. So they really only got blown out twice last year.
Yeah.
They're in most of these games. They go 5-7. They should have been a bowl team last year. They should have beat Pitt.
Easily.
I mean, so I think they can take that next. I mean, you have a guy who's played a year now. He's a junior. You have – I don't know how they kept Dante Corleone. I would love that. I want to do a 30 for 30 on how that cat stayed in Cincinnati. They must have something on him. He must love him some Bearcats. I don't know. I got to find out
Skyline
how
chili, man, you can't leave
Yeah,
it.
he's probably a big Skyline chili kind of guy.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, I think if anybody could shock us, it would be Cincinnati.
Yeah, first of all, it's FanDuel has her over under at 6.5, which like is a little like for an over under feels a little steep for them. I think 5.5 would be a good number for them.
I agree.
Because I think that they're going to be a 7-5-ish team, which I think would be a good step forward for them. But yeah, it's one, can you clean up these late game situation stuff? Because like, here's the other piece too. You go through and evaluate at the end of the year, and you're just kind of trying to figure out where their biggest holes are. And it's like, they're about middle of the pack in most stats. Like the one thing where they really struggled was run defense, ironically, because like Dante Corleone was kind of the guy.
Yeah, and so people just ran away from him.
Yeah, exactly.
outside.
And he still had 70 tackles, which is crazy. But you know, so one, they have to get a little bit better at not getting blown off the ball on defense. But like again, it's not like they need to take big steps. They just keep messing up the little stuff, right? Like they just have to tackle better, they have to block better, they have to be in the right position, they have to make the right decisions. In the second half of the year, they put so much on Brendan Sorsby and he started turning the ball over, right? Like they just have to manage the program better. And that's always the scariest situation for me, because I can project a kid to get better at, you know, at making the right decision. It's hard when it's the staff making wrong decisions. So yeah, I think, you know, year 3 is going to be a big one for them. And we're going to kind of, you know, I feel like this gets to lazy. Not like we're going to figure out whether this is working or not in year 3.
Well, Shehan, I have to correct myself. Corleone only had 26 tackles last year. There was a year a few years ago where he had, I think, 70 tackles.
I thought that he was he was a little bit on a pitch count last year, from what I remember, because you know he was coming off of the blood clot situation, and so like they didn't want to overdo it with him, and so they feel like though coming into 2025, this is Dante Corleone. He is back. He is ready. He is fully healthy.
And I don't know where I got the 70 number from. It was 45, which is still absurd. But
I got a lot of tackles for a defensive tackle.
Yes. 45 and 39. I think that's maybe
70 is Aaron Donald
range. I think I was putting year 1 and year 2 together, 45 and 39. So my apologies, people. I'll use Cincinnati stands out there. And then as I was looking that up, Dante Corleone stayed in Cincinnati because of his love for the city.
Skyline chili. It's a Skyline chili. Well, Shehan, we really appreciate you joining us here. Really appreciate you joining and jumping on and talking some Big 12 football. You know, feel free to let everybody know where they can find on your writing and find and follow you on Twitter, because I think you're one of the best followers on Twitter, or X, whatever we call it now.
We do not call it X. You can find all my work over at cbssports.com. You can find me on every social media platform at Shehan Jeyarajah. Thankfully, a pretty easy handle to get, but I'm definitely the most active on Twitter /X. So make sure to follow me over there, and I'm excited for the season to get started.
Yeah, make sure you go follow Blue Sky.
Your team. Yeah, Shehan will make fun of your team, and then he will make sure he lets you know that he was making fun of your team. He poked me a couple of times last year. I got my feelings hurt, so I had, you know, me and him went back and forth a few times. But great follow. I love the interactions we have, Shehan.
Well, we really appreciate Shehan, and I can't wait till we can do this again soon.